So let me welcome everyone to another CERIAS seminar. Last week we were off for spring break, and those of you who were associated with the university, I hope you had a pleasant and safe spring break. We're ready to jump right back into this with a wonderful speaker that's been trying to get here for a couple of years now. Bill Newhouse has been working in the area of security writ large for over 3 decades. He has experience in a number of different federal agencies and departments. I won't go through the entire list of them. Some of them are on the website here, but they've included service with the Office of the Secretary of Defense, some collaboration with the Department of Energy, and for about the last decade or so, he's been working with the National Institute of Standards and Technology, helping to run the NIST program for cybersecurity education, and most recently working at the National Center of Excellence in cybersecurity. So he's going to take this wealth of experience, great insight, and tell us all about it. Let me remind the audience that if you have questions, please post them in the Q&A section, not the chat, in the Q&A, and Bill will answer them as they fit in, I guess. So with no further ado, Bill, thank you for being here, and take it away.
Thanks, Beth. I appreciate it. It's really nice to be here. And you did ask me, you probably asked me 8 years ago, and then you more specifically asked me 2 years ago. And then I attended a session in January, and it convinced me that, I had the time to do this. And then, of course, real life pops in and you realize, oh, shoot, I haven't made my slides. But I did actually put together a slide deck. It's not going to be everything I talk about. But what I want to tell you about is that I do work at a place called the National Cybersecurity Center of Excellence. It was given to us as a name by the senator who found the funding and said, NIST, you seem to know everything about cybersecurity or computer security or InfoSec or whatever. Why don't I give you some money and then you can tell people how to do things right? And that's kind of that's oversimplifying it, but we are essentially an applied cybersecurity center that is attempting to leverage, amongst many things, the qualities of NIST guidance and standards that are already in use. And so I'll be bouncing around between the idea that NIST does foundational research, offers standards and guidance, standards for the federal government, guidance for everybody else to consider adopting voluntarily, and that we now have a center we've almost been around a decade as well, that is aimed at producing stuff that will see more cybersecurity happen, more mitigation of cybersecurity risk happen. So thanks for having me. It's a privilege to be here with you guys. And let me get my cursors working. Okay. And so you asked me, what would I talk about? And I said, well, I am part of an applied cybersecurity center. So if you're part of one, and our mission statement is to accelerate the adoption of secure technologies, which problematically, I would say there's no such thing as a secure technology, but if you put things together, you can claim more security or more secureness or something. But anyway, that problematic accelerate the adoption of secure technologies is our mission statement. And your vision is to advance cybersecurity. Well, what does that mean? Push something over a hill, let it roll down the hill. Now, in this case, NIST has been in this game for a while and mitigating cybersecurity risk or promoting risk management frameworks is kind of a foundational thing we do. So in that context, what do I get to do? What kind of projects do I get to lead now that I'm in my 35th year of federal service? And I'll describe that, and I'll describe the context by which they get built, and then let you guys ask me more questions and push on me to tell you and justify and listen to you about what you need. Because as students and as practitioners in this space, I hear a lot of people saying, it's great that NIST says that, it's great that NIST did that. I want to know, do you care that I've done this stuff at the center? And if it helps, and if it doesn't yet, how can we move it so it will help your specific interest? And there's going to be a lot of interesting challenges. If you want to cheat and do a read ahead, you can just go to our website, nccoe.nist.gov, and don't listen at all. Again, back to that accelerate adoption of secure technologies. The more important part here is in the white text. We are set up to collaborate. And, you know, I'm a wordsmither in the sense that you can just tell I use words really well. No, the collaborate with innovators. Well, innovators is a tough thing. Innovation often means somebody gave me something that nobody else thought of. In this case, I'd like to say collaborate with people who have similar problems and can help us innovate to get solutions, to get more cybersecurity risk mitigated, to anticipate. So innovation isn't just the invention of technologies, but it's the adoption and use and everything. So get together with people, and then we're going to try to provide real world standard-based cybersecurity capabilities. And that sounds like you can buy something from us, and ultimately you can get information from us. You can see evidence of what we've done as we build what I would call reference designs, and we demonstrate their functionality. So the part at the end there says that address business needs is part of being an applied cybersecurity center. Is you better have an audience. And so we aim at sectors in different areas that NIST would have no governance of, because we're a non-regulatory agency, but really, you know, moving into places, and you'll see with some of the projects I describe in a second, places that you wouldn't expect to find NIST offering direct guidance. Well, we work our way into those communities and ask them if we can help. This is a screenshot. So the first project an active project that I'm working on is described as data classification. Again, a challenge that I face is with every audience is to give you the context of what those two terms mean together, and then offer you some fact about this project to let you know where it started, where it's going. And there's lots of buzzwords in this description. If you were trying to read it, you'd notice on the left, data centric, security management. You know, those mean things to people who've been in the business for a while. To students, you might recognize that as part of a lecture or class series, but it often can mean different things to different people. So in this project, I want you to notice that we have a description of it, high level. We have a little bit more to the left, but this is on our webpage. On the right, in the box that says status, seeking collaborators. So I will offer a little bit more information about that as we move along. But in that box, the key is that we use an open and transparent process to describe a need for people to bring technology to us. We are a building in Rockville, Maryland, off the main NIST campus called the National Cybersecurity Center of Excellence. The Federal Register notice says, please come bring us your technologies, please offer it to us, and we will think about inviting you into being a collaborator. And then you bring your technology to our lab, and we try to use it in a functional way to show that more cybersecurity risk can be mitigated, that we can achieve some of the outcomes that are expected in our cybersecurity framework. So that's one project, and I'll come back and circle around these in a little bit. But data classification, I will point out that maybe it's not written here directly, but if you click through on this link, if you were on the page yourself, that NIST is focused also now on the zero trust architecture concepts. It is a term of art by the industry to sell you stuff. It is everything we've always wanted to do, often sold in one contained set of products from an individual vendor. And in amongst the things you need to do zero trust architectures is to know your data. So data classification will be a foundational reminder or tutorial or demonstration, all the above, and set of ors, that will help prepare your organization potentially to start achieving zero trust architecture principles and the tenets therein. So foundational is our hope. I get to work on a cool project in applied cryptography called Migration to Post-Quantum Cryptography. There are 3 projects that are in this space ongoing at the center. And again, notice the little box that says seeking collaborators. Just like the data classification project, I have a poorly timed sense of doing things where I'm needing to deal with vendors from 2 different areas of technology: data classification, seeing if they want to join us in the collaboration, and now in migration to post-quantum cryptography. You may be aware that NIST is developing and has been working on a process to select and identify post-quantum cryptographic algorithms, the kind of algorithms that will resist quantum, the notion that a quantum computer will one day be able to break aspects of public key encryption is been posited for many years. Don't ask me when that's going to happen. Some people think it will happen in our lifetime. Some people say no. Some people think it'll happen in 5 years. Either way, all the ways, moving to post-quantum cryptographic algorithms will help to ensure that your data, that your processes are protected even when that quantum computer is designed and used. And crypto modernization is a useful and time-consuming process. And so this project, we're going to be doing things to help people discover where public key encryption is being used within the systems they already own, that they're procuring, help the vendors who put those technologies into their products start to anticipate what it's going to take to use the new algorithms. It's not picking the algorithms. That's a different team of people in a different division here at NIST. But this is going to help people get ready. And I heard one vendor call this the Y2q problem. And back in the late 90s, people said, oh, geez, we're going to have a lot of problems because of Y2K and 2 digits used for years on dates and programming languages and compilers and such. Well, a lot of work was done to modernize based around that, and all that was probably for the good, and nothing really bad happened that I recall on January 1st, 2000. We're hoping that if we get ahead of this, we can avoid and help people get to a better place in advance of the threat being realized in quantum computing. A third project that's ongoing for me, Spaff mentioned that I'm working with the Department of Energy, and it's a small project working with their Office of Cybersecurity, Energy Security, and Emergency Response, known as CESAR, to help them take something they already developed and connect it with something that NIST has developed. So I should have left in the right column over here, not the acronym for CSF. Cybersecurity Framework is the CSF in the first paragraph. So we're working with them. They have a cybersecurity capability maturity model that energy sector companies can run as a tool. NIST has a cybersecurity framework, which is essentially a broad structure of functions, categories, and subcategories that help describe cybersecurity risk, achieving things that would help you mitigate cybersecurity risk. And we recognize in the domain so that energy folks might know C2M2 but not CSF, or they've already been sold a product that has CSF baked in. And if we can help them understand how these two systems of assessing or understanding your ability to deal with cybersecurity risk, then we've advanced the entire sector. So that's a goal. And there's also a notion that at the time that this contract was interagency agreement was brought up, maritime or marine transportation system work was getting a lot of focus. It's one more part of our critical infrastructure, and will require just as much energy as any other operational technology, industrial control, process control sector. And so we are helping them mature in that space and have developed what's called a cybersecurity framework profile for, in this case, liquefied natural gas, which I will point out, if you've been watching the news, that if you can't move gas through Ukraine from Russia or around Ukraine from Russia into Europe next year, the need for moving gas from the US to Europe would be supported by liquefying it and then putting it on special ships. And that is a process that now we have a framework that would help those organizations think about their cybersecurity risk in a more mature way. I know I offer a lot based on these slides. We'll come back and I'll show you where to find more if you have questions in specific areas. But these are 3 projects. I said data classification, I said applied cryptography, and energy sector support. This isn't the only work. The energy sector has their own resources. They're pushing hard. They're being pushed on hard by our the executive office of the president to do more. So Chris Inglis is our cybersecurity, national cybersecurity advisor, and is growing a community of people who are pushing out through agencies like Department of Homeland Security, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, and Department of Energy as a sector-specific agency is a big player, and they're leveraging NIST because of our focus on cybersecurity risk management. And one of the outcomes I just described was that we created a cybersecurity framework profile for liquefied natural gas. This offers some words about the importance of it. For me, I got to tour a facility here. I live in Maryland, in Cove Point, down near Solomon's Island, Maryland, on the Chesapeake Bay. There is a facility that liquefies natural gas and pumps it out into ships that pull up into the bay, and then those ships take it back to Europe and Japan and I believe India. And it's fascinating to see, and it's, industrial control environments that I have not worked in until now, thinking about this stuff. But the good news is that part of what I get to do here at the center, which I haven't noted yet, is that we have MITRE as our federally funded research and development corporation, really providing a lot of they're our partners here at the center. And so leveraging MITRE and some of the process control engineers they've hired have been part of this project. And I have folks who are at an event this week called Hack the Port, talking about this paper. This paper, a cybersecurity framework profile, is guidance, and it says, if you read through all the words, non-regulatory and voluntary, because we don't have a regulatory push over this sector. The Department of Energy has some regulation space. The Coast Guard has some of the regulatory space in this. The ports and the folks who do the ports and harbors will also have stuff. Anyway, the framework that I've mentioned a couple times has 108 subcategories of things that if you achieve, you should feel better about your ability to deal with attacks and threats, because you've prepared. And a cybersecurity framework in this case has asked experts in the liquefied natural gas industry to tell us what's their priority today. And so we have a kind of an as is. If you are in the liquefied natural gas business, here are the subcategories you should aim for first, based on the mission objectives of the sector. What do they need to do? What do they need to protect as their main line of business? And it helps take away from having to think about 108 things to achieve as outcomes, and knocks it down. No, that doesn't mean those extra ones you don't focus on should be ignored. It just gives you a prioritization, a way to start. And so these profiles offer a window into who you think you want to be or are in your ability to address risk, cybersecurity risk, and growing into the privacy risk space as well. All right, let me look at this quick, see how long I've taken to say this stuff. All right, we're about 18 minutes in. Good. Two projects that I finished, and this is a sector that was described in an executive order back in 2014, 2015 timeframe that said improve consumer confidence. And that means, we have a retail and hospitality sector. And in fact, it's self-organized in such a way that now there is a retail hospitality ISAC, Information Sharing Analysis Center, that is pushing on the entire space of retail and hospitality, which is a broad-based thing. But picture, retail being places you shop online or brick and mortar, and hospitality being resorts and hotels and amusement parks and anything you do where you're made happy by just showing up and engaging their property, their space. So we chose to do a project in multi-factor authentication for e-commerce. When we did that a couple of years ago, the idea of fast identity online and the open standards that it represented were newish to people. And there's an industry consortium that has focused on that method of authentication, those methods. We demonstrated a FIDO server. We had a risk engine that we got from a vendor, and we built something and demonstrated it and published a practice guide. So the words on the bottom of the slide say finalized practice guide, meaning we went out, built something, showed people what kind of risk that system mitigated, and then documented it, asked for public comments, because that's what NIST does for everything we publish. Took those comments, tried to make the document better, add to the document if those comments asked for things that we didn't include the first time. And then as a final, we're just saying we're not putting more resources into this space at present to work on that particular reference design. Securing property management systems in the hospitality sector, there is a giant database that is called the property management system. And we offered some ways to basically put prophylactics around it and support it in a way that it can support all your needs on your property, and also protect the information inside the property management system. Because you could, if you hadn't thought about it, you might now realize property management system is helping decide where staff does their work. It might also be involved with the supply chain of things coming in and out, food, towels, linens, whatever, where people are working. But also, maybe most importantly, is reservations and guest information and how that all gets handled. And so we built a system, and we offered in building that some notions of a new NIST paper that helps to define zero trust architectures in a careful way, called NIST Special Pub 800-207. In that publication, it had tenets of zero trust, the things that you should be trying to achieve within zero trust. It had names of the elements and the system that a zero trust architecture is composed of. And we spent the time to say, look, this is not a zero trust architecture, but you're closer to achieving it in this project. And we offered that which technologies would be, which component within a zero trust architecture, and how maybe to start measuring a little bit about the functions are being protected, the data is being protected, that you're asking the questions that a zero trust architecture asks about, do I trust this device right now when I'm making a transaction between, data moving from one device to the next, all those things that happen. We tried to give you kind of a primer into that space, and we used the property management system as the example. So that was kind of some fun over the last couple of years. And then prior to that, this is a screenshot of a page that we call our archive, which is things we've done at the center in the first 10 years that don't show up on the front matter page because we think they're a little closer to being stale, in the sense that we built something for each of these boxes. And the one that I got to do is derived PIV, personal identity verification access. So I have a PIV card. If you're looking at the little box of me speaking, my PIV card it's got a chip on it, and the chip has a digital signature certificate, and it also has an encryption certificate, and I'm able to leverage it because I can put it into a keyboard that has a card reader, or a laptop that has a slot, because we still buy those in the federal government. Well, more and more technology has moved to not having card readers. My phone, I could certainly plug one into the high-speed data port on the bottom of the thing, but I don't really want to jam a card into this thing. So derived PIV means take the credentials and that take the qualities of what lets you have a card, a physical card with those certificates on it, and develop a system by which those same quality and measurable certificates can be used in a mobile device and stored and properly dealt with for revoking, and all the things we do with the physical cards can be done logically in a mobile device. So that was kind of fun. And while we were doing that, NIST was advancing the digital identity space with a new special pub 863, which revised the language, which revised how we communicate about authentication and identities and access management. And so it offered a little bit of the shift in that direction. One of the challenges with everything we build here at the center is we build it at a certain time in time. And therefore, as soon as we're done, many could say, that's a little obsolete because they've already moved on to version 2 and you built with version 1, or the standard for that isn't finished. Well, that's some of the trade-offs that happen in these projects. We have to decide, what can we do within a certain amount of time? What resources do we have? And then try to hold to a value statement, which is that we've defined a problem space in each of these projects that compels people to want to read them, that they agree that this is a space they're evolving towards. So some of these are pretty easy. If you didn't know to focus on DNS-based secured email, you could open this publication and learn a heck of a lot about DNS-based secured email, see some technologies that were implemented in a laboratory. And so I actually, if you're on faculty or going to be faculty somewhere or are teaching somewhere, I would say parts of our practice guides, which is this special web 1800 series that these become, can be great resources in your classroom. NIST hasn't developed them to be curriculum, but I think you could, because they're carefully crafted and they hold on to some really good concepts about security and privacy, risk management, and then even the security and privacy controls that are relevant. Yeah, so I see the question, and I'll get to this, but what are some ways CERIAS students and researchers can get involved with the NIST NCCOE? I'm gonna check the next slide to make sure. Yeah, I'll use this slide to offer that up. It's a great question. I appreciate it. So this is our front matter on our webpage. We have technology focus. So I have a colleague who's building a 5G laboratory here in the building. And if you went to the Federal Register, and at some point I can type that into the chat, you could search Federal Register for NCCOE and see what we've been asking people to come bring to us. Well, as students or researchers, you don't have technology to bring to us, but for every technology focused project we're working on or sector focused, we have these essentially the status on the right side of the slide says we're going to define the scope. We will send out, if for that consumer data protection one on retail, we sent out a description of what we hoped to do back in like 2015, and people could come back to us, and the sector specific, like RH ISAC, which back in the day had a different name, they could respond and say, that's a neat sounding project, but could you also do this? And so as students and researchers, you can influence how we describe what we want to focus on because we share it publicly. When we say we're seeking collaborators, well, that might be better for the researchers who are already involved with industry while they're in doing their research. They may, if you're academic partnerships you have with private industry, you may be able to tell me, hey, Bill, I heard you're doing migration to post-quantum cryptography. And remember when you said out loud that the first thing you think that project's going to do is discover public key encryption within networks and devices. I know a university program or I know a local company that has built that tool, then you would push them towards us and we would hope to gain them as a collaborator. So you're our extra ears and eyes in that case. Preparing draft essentially is big words for we've built something, we have to describe it to you. And then when we have done that, document it all out, we put it out for public comment. So from this website, and I'll pull up the live website and show you a few examples of it. You can find the status and I would suggest if you Googled NCCOE, the 5 letters, NIST, 5 letters, and if you're in a class on some topic, you might find that we have a project in that space. And if we're in the area of doing a draft, you might find a way to say, hey, can we talk about this draft in class? Can I use it as part of my homework to show that we're going to offer comments back to NIST that they have to adjudicate, that I have to adjudicate as a project lead. When somebody says, you wrote this way in the project draft, the publication, you can help me fix that. So NIST always puts everything out for public comment, usually a 30 to 60 day time period. And if we don't get enough because we weren't good enough at drawing attention to it, we extend those sometimes. But our goal is to allow people who have expertise to tell us that we could do it better. Even if you just read those and never submitted a comment, you'd learn of a heck of a lot. But if you submit a comment, your name gets tied to it because we ask you to, it's not something we want to be unattributable, and therefore we get to know you. So in getting involved could also be you get to meet other people who care about the same stuff as we adjudicate, because we may find your comments so useful we invite you to a conversation, to a meeting. So there's the whole comment period. As we go to public final, that's an opportunity. We hold a lot of events and seminars ourselves. We're copycats, so something that you guys at CERIAS has been doing since 1994. We have a steady pace of learn with us, come to a fireside chat, get a high level view, understand where we're going, and I'll get into a little bit of our strategies about where we're going in a moment. So we're about half hour in. But those are some of the ways. If you want to ask me specifically from my answer to that question, how can you get involved? I'm happy to continue to dive down into that space. We are a brick and mortar building. If you're close and nearby, you can ask to come visit and get a tour. We need to grow into this space. We do have an academic affiliates program, and it's not really big yet. The idea was and is growing back into being, we should be creating some of this material in a way that it is reproducible, and all of it should be reproducible, but reproducible and affordable for use in a classroom environment is an area that if we hear from the right students, researchers, and faculty, we might be able to take something and help provide a push to something that might improve your lab environment, perhaps. So I'll pause there for a second to see if another question comes in, move my slides forward just a little bit. Reiterating the approach: define, assemble, and build are things we have to do. Yeah, and I guess I should say answered. You moved it to answered. Thank you. And then on the next slide, move my cursor so it actually hits page down. The notion that there's collaboration through all this is how students and researchers can get involved, documenting it as we go along the whole time. Well, we ask and we share when we have something for people to review and look at. And then me being here is an example of advocate and educate, but we have a strong need to reach into the sector or the industry space that we're trying to help. We have it's pressing to figure out, there's a lot of cybersecurity challenges. What can NIST do that's in somewhat NIST-y fashion as a non-regulatory agency? What can we do to move to more adoption of cybersecurity that isn't already happening, that people aren't already paying for, or isn't already being built into systems? And if you can help us identify those things that, people still aren't convinced of as a starting point to a conversation that can compel us to really take on a project, or within a project to develop what I would call a use case. And when we're building, and we are definitely trying to show a functional system and show you that the cybersecurity qualities that add to the ability to mitigate cybersecurity risk can be measured through technologies that are built into the system, that we verify that the step happened. So if I told you that risk engine needed to tell the FIDO server that you need to now ask for a second factor because the risk looks high, we functionally show that all happens. By way of metaphor, when we build these projects and look at that assemble teams, and assemble includes getting technologies into our lab, our Federal Register notice will say we need somebody in a metaphor space, as as an analogy. We're building a car. We need steel belted radials because we want to drive the car on the highway for 2 hours at 55 miles an hour, and we don't want the tire to rip apart. And steel belted is the minimum requirement we think is a good standard to follow. So that's an example of the standard driving what we need. Now, when we put that Federal Register notice on, if Goodyear and BF Goodrich and Cooper and any other tire manufacturer sent in, we'd like to participate, I only need one set of tires and I only need them to be steel belted radials. We're not going to be Consumer Reports where we take 70 in and we say these are the best 5 and these are the next best 10. We're going to take one in. We're going to say functionally how it needs to work, and we're going to tell you how we verified that it functioned as expected. And then if you say, well, I don't have BF Goodrich, I've got Goodyear, you can replace it as you try to build what we've built. I'm sure I'm bouncing around in concepts that you're like, wait, what did he just say? So Indiana has had a 5G lab that has projects in security. Yes, so NCCOE can partner. Now, what we need to connect our lab to, another lab could be part of that potential collaboration. The other thing it could be is just what have you done in your lab could inform us, and vice versa. So that would be great. Every one of these projects has a community of interest. I can introduce you, if you're the 5G Indiana lab person, with our 5G lead, and you guys can find out, is there synergy between what you're doing and what they're doing? How can you benefit from each other? Speaking engagements, things like that. It's all open to the possibilities. So that would be good to know more about. And my email is just newhouse@nist.gov, NEWHOUSE@nist.gov. It'll be in the deck that you can get later, and it may already be on the page. You can reach out to me directly with that. Cool. So I'm going to throw a few more things about the NCCOE that we believe we hold to. Standards based. Now, for one project, the standard was FIDO, Fast Identity Online. It was the FIDO 2 original early standard for enabling multi-factor authentication, and they've moved on with additional standards, and we could build more. We've done other work with other parts of FIDO in different builds, but in mine, that was all we did. But standard-based also could be a best practice. And the best practice that we often land on is the NIST cybersecurity framework. So I hope you've bumped into it at some point in your career, in your studies. It is a useful conversation starter for talking about mitigating cybersecurity risk, and it has a lot. I'll say it. I should have a slide up. I can get one later, but the idea of it tells you 108 things you might want to do. It doesn't tell you how to do them, because NIST can't know that about your individual organization. So we leave a lot of room, what I call to the right of it, because I'm English speaking left to right reader. Subcategories here off to the right, we can list other standards that are relevant. We do that. We call those online informative references. Good. So now maybe we've connected you with a standard that's in your industry space you care about. So we've affirmed something perhaps. The next thing that happens in the cybersecurity framework is, well, what tools do that? Well, NIST is not involved in saying this tool does this better than that, but you can make those decisions, and then you can answer back to your chief financial officer or your CISO, hey, this subcategory says we should be doing these things, and we have 2 tools that do most of those things. We feel pretty good about ourselves. A smart, clever person could also say, but that doesn't guarantee anything. And they're right. Risk mitigation and risk management is not absolute. It is a commitment, and it is something that the cybersecurity framework allows you a language to then communicate maturity, how far you're willing to go, where you need to go next, things like that. So standards-based can be just a framework, and we offer a lot of that. Standard could be an international standard that says implement DNS-based email security this way, because that's the way the IFC says to do it, and go for that, or the IEEE standard. So that's possible. Modular, we hope that as we build stuff that you could extract from a build a certain thing like a server and go, I can do that too. That's harder to prove when we put it into 200-page PDF documents. So we're trying to build a new tooling system that would let you extract some of our work faster and better. Repeatable, if we built it, it didn't happen because we're special magic unicorns. It happened because we followed a recipe that we offer to you so that you can make the same cookies we made. We know that, that's going to be difficult because you may not be able to afford the equipment that we used, but we give you a full list. And the idea is that it's not magic. It's hard work. It's careful work. Commercially available. We're not here at the center to build things that aren't available to everybody to get their hands on. And that can be, we can move that window a little bit, but we don't want people coming at us with their silver bullet. We have a new thing that hasn't been tested, isn't part of a standard that they're trying to patent so that they can own the market. Commercially available means that if we bring it in here and build with it, that you could find it too if you had the means to buy it. It's not hidden. It's not the kind of protected venture capital backed thing that says we're not showing it yet because it's not done. Usable, that's to be proven to us, and this is where a good area for feedback. If you do start reading our publications, please complain vigorously if you find them to make, if all they do is make you fall asleep, then we need to write better. We need to pick a new methodology to get this stuff in front of you, because as you already know, it is hard to communicate all the nuances of cybersecurity, security, information assurance, privacy. And so we keep grabbing frameworks to squeeze it all together. Well, we want to know, does it resonate? And so usable, clean, easy to follow. How many people have read the full car manual in their glove box if you own a car? I go there when that light comes on the dash that I don't understand, and I go to the appendix and I look at indicator lights, and it says, oh, you can just push this button for 5 seconds and it'll go out. Problem solved. Well, that implies that people don't really want to read their manuals anymore, and if we keep writing manuals, we're not going to convey what we want to. And open and transparent, I mentioned our processes are described, put out for public comment, and dealt with that way. So those are the constraints under which I get to build stuff, and that's challenging. The open and transparent part means I also have to establish cooperative research and development agreements with the companies that bring us technologies. And so every time I'm ready to start, there's always like 1 more 2 weeks before we get that signature kind of moment. And then once we have the technology together, getting it done in a timely manner and publishing it without too many verbose words so that people can use it. If we take too long, we can be beaten by progress. If it takes us a year to show you zero trust architectures, I bet you will have 47 vendors trying to sell it to you if you were part of a company that was looking for a zero trust architecture to build. Reiteration of our sectors. Make sure any new questions. Oh yeah, and Doug, you're the one who asked the 5G question, and you know how to reach me. I've done a bad job of describing publications in any detailed way, but on the left of this picture, NIST Special Publication 1800, that's the designation for stuff that comes out of this center where I work. We've also put out guides and tip sheets and draft and final NIST informational reports, NIST IRs. So, and we've created videos because we think that if you need to convey why this is important, a video might do it faster than me speaking for now 40 minutes. So that's amongst the possibility, and we have a web, that library link probably still works, but we did update our website probably since this slide was built. And then back to that question of researchers, how can you get involved? If you have an idea and you say it would be cool if you could build this, we're happy to hear it, and especially if it supports a sector that is vital to our economy or our safety or our lifestyles. Great. Big or small, you can send them our way, and frankly, we should be sending a lot of them out your way to think about in classrooms. We can discuss challenges in environments like this. do it more interactively, be on panels together, things like that. Contribute to publications, I already talked about. You can submit comments and help them make them better. And by doing so, you start to pull yourself into an environment of the careful crafting of guidance and documentation that NIST is known for. And then there are ways, if you're a technology provider, to participate in a project. If you care about a particular sector, you can join our community of interest and weigh in whenever we offer the opportunity. We will convey stuff to you, and occasionally we will hold workshops and things in those spaces. So that last part about joining community of interest could help you participate. I'm going to pause there just to see if anybody wants to throw into the Q&A, the question and answer box, something that they're like totally puzzled by because I spoke so fast. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the bigger context of NIST, just so you have a sense that I'm going to push that all of you should be tracking something about NIST and vice versa, in a way that, because we are a non-regulatory agency, which gives us we have a long history of providing guidance and standards. And when I worked at NSA through in the mid-aughts, 2003, 2005 was the first time I really had a job that said information assurance on it. Before that, I had been a telecommunications engineer, and I was using bulk encryptors to protect data so that we had plain text inside a secure compartmented building information facility, and we had ciphertext that nobody could break going across commercial pipelines. When I got to do the information assurance stuff, I then started doing interagency research work, where just communicating what's happening from different departments, different agencies, different parts of our executive branch. And I kept meeting these NIST people, and they were doing a lot of the same work that I was aware that NSA people were doing. And I thought, that's weird. I eventually rightly learned that there has been a historical divide between committees for the national security systems and the non-national security systems of our government. And NIST had the responsibility for the non-national security guidance and standards that had to be followed. And Federal Information Security Management Act pushed NIST to provide more of that. And all that good work has been voluntarily adopted by industry over time. I'm going to be describing a little bit about different divisions that might be interesting to you in your career as you move forward. So I don't see another question come in. I'll continue where I'm going. NIST is part of the U.S. Department of Commerce. That's an executive office of the government. You have the Department of Homeland Security being another example. You have Department of Interior, the Treasury Department. You've got Department of Defense. You've got intelligence community and so each of these are different parts of the executive branch. So Commerce doesn't show here, but Commerce has things like the NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric. Gosh, I should have that one better in my head before I get there. We have the Census Bureau. NIST sits on a street called 100 Bureau Drive because we used to be called the Bureau of Standards, and many of the Commerce sub-agencies are bureaus, and that's kind of cool. Sounds kind of old-fashioned. I guess somebody decided to rebrand ourselves, and they did in the late 80s, early 90s, and we became NIST. Look at the 6 boxes in that bigger circle on the outside where I say there are other NIST laboratories. Out in Colorado, we've established a communications technology laboratory that's doing work on first responder networks and public safety networks and communication technology writ large. We have an engineering laboratory that can focus on things like, hey, was that steel that was in, well, I wouldn't use that one. Engineering lab can do things like testing of materials that are being used to build and support our infrastructure, fire safety, anything engineering. I'm going to do, despite being an electrical engineer, I'm doing a lousy job of telling you that in the engineering laboratory, if there's a need for a standard or a measurement, that engineering laboratory can do that. Materials measurement laboratory supports a lot of the measurements that are needed by the medical and like National Institute of Health and Cancer Institute, and the things we need to do down at that small level of understanding what's happening inside us as organisms and the materials and the fluids and things that we deal. That's a really bad way of saying MML, but material measurement is down at that small level, often focused on health aspects and support to the things, pharmacology and other things that would need to be measured. Physical measurement laboratory, as it sounds, would be the kind of place where if we needed to really redefine the cage, what a kilogram is, or a meter, that, you know, to make our society function better, to make manufacturing happen better, the physical measurement laboratory focuses on it. And then we have two cool places where you can bounce neutrons off materials, or you can do nanofab stuff, and those are user facility labs where some people win, you know, Nobel Prizes who work there, and it's kind of neat to be able to walk down the hallway and bump into somebody. Cool. So I'm going to quickly read the question. NIST emphasizes open transparency as well as making the framework accessible commercially. What measures do you take to protect the integrity of your cybersecurity framework and account? Okay, yeah. I'll let you guys read that Q&A as well. I'm going to try to read most of it out loud. That when I talk to the right of the framework, there's a lot of room for you to figure out what you need to do. NIST is unable to go there. And so the question of if am I grabbing a resource from NIST and do I know it's written and accurate and right, that had popped up in our space of the National Vulnerability Database, where we score vulnerabilities along with a bunch of other entities, including MITRE. Are we giving people the right data? Is the integrity involved? And so some of that will be formalized into, you know, signed code that will have a value that you can verify as you take it from us. The framework itself right now isn't that fancy and formal. The words of the subcategories are on our website. You just Google NIST CSF, and it can be given to you in a format that's a spreadsheet. We are building more online informative references, which focus on mappings to the framework, and eventually those aren't cryptographically bound in a way that makes sure that the words coming to you are you know, are the ones you expect to get. At this point, we haven't seen too much threat of people spoofing it. You can probably still go to Amazon and find somebody who wants to sell you the framework for $1,000 in a book. Don't do that. You know, everything we do is put out for public use. And then the question, potentially, I'm making your question fancier, Julian, is that, you know, there's an integrity aspect to everything we do that if we find it being abused, or if anybody notices, we want to know. And if, you know, that's going to be a growing problem, you know, fakes and copies and I'm forgetting all the good words in that space, but it's interesting to have to put security on top of something that's aimed at security so that people can know they're getting an integral kind of thing. So it's an interesting conversation, and we're coming up on the time frame. I want to stop and let you guys all ask questions. I was trying to give you a big context of NIST. We have an information technology lab, and ANTD, Advanced Networking Technologies Division, is places where like secure BGP standards will be talked about and how to adopt them, and IPv6 was advanced through that office. Computer Security Division is where our 800 series come out of, where Ron Ross works doing RMF with Vicky Piliteri. So risk management frameworks come out of there. That's the office that includes a group that's the cryptographic tools office, and they're the ones leading the charge to get to the post-quantum cryptographic algorithms, which I expect you'll see a paper this month that is a draft of the selected algorithms, which means the draft is the start to the next argument. How to you know, get that to final will be a fun year-long, at least a year-long effort, and then getting those algorithms in use will be part of what I'm supporting and take decades. Information Access Division has been focusing for years on text retrieval, video aspects of you know, the quality of usability things. There's Julie Haney and her colleagues are focused on security, usable security, and security usability, and you can, if you put those in different orders, you can take a different emphasis. Software and Systems Division has a whole focus on software assurance, as well as we do within the Information Access Division, where we have a software security development framework. So none of these are perfect line, you know, stovepipe efforts. There's a lot of crosswork anyway. And then we also have a math and statistical engineering division, which underpin all of NIST science. As you can tell, I got way more stuff to talk about than I could ever get to. There's a journey that is implied by this picture here that says we care about these areas the most-ish, you know, and that's a fancy word to say all of these babies we love. Spaff mentioned that I worked on the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education. So we do have a focus in that space, defining a framework, defining competencies, defining eventually teams, and what the kind of things we need to be able to do together to support our cybersecurity and privacy needs. And I don't like to say our privacy and cybersecurity risk mitigation needs. Identity and access management is core and if you can't do that, you're not going to survive long. If people can't trust that who you are and what it is happening as you interact with the systems, that's obvious. Metrics and measurement. This is one area where you might say, boy, NIST says it's the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and you call yourself a metrology organization. How come you don't have all the answers about how well we're doing and stuff? And it's really hard because we often don't have the denominator, but we can give you lots of numerators. These are probably parts of classes you've had where you can know only so much, and so a lot of what we still say is get foundationally ahead of the game by doing authentication and identity and access management correctly, and then you eliminate one set of problems that now you can focus on other things. But that doesn't often serve. If we're telling you 108 things to do and each of those could have 75 different tasks within it, which one to do first is still going to be overwhelming to you. But we're trying to be the organization that's helping to figure this space out as time goes on. Trustworthy platforms, privacy, we have a framework for that now. Emerging technologies, well, some might say IoT is an emerging technology. It's emerging just continuous growth, exponential growth and use. But there's other emerging areas of artificial intelligence and the security and bias and things like that NIST has papers on. The cryptographic area has been a strength of NIST forever and will continue to be so. Trustworthy networks falls into that. 5G do we trust it? It also falls into the push for zero trust architectures, and there's a big wide federal push on it, and NIST has been involved in developing the foundational, how do we communicate this stuff so we can start to leverage it. And then risk management really is the outcome of all this stuff, is if you do things, you can then start to address and say, I do risk management, which is the ultimate end. Now, how that connects with exactly where you're studying, I think back to the push I said earlier, Google NIST and what you care about. And if you can't find something, I'd be surprised. But if you find some stuff, I'm happy to introduce you to my colleagues who lead that space. They're always open to talking and learning and connecting. And we want to know that what we produce is useful and vital. And we think it is. So I'm going to pause and stop there. It's been a good 52-minute ride. And I didn't get to show you a live website, which is probably good because, don't do live theater with kids on stage and you'll fail. Don't do live theater with websites because you'll fail at some level. But everything we do is transparent and findable on the web. So with that, I'll pause again and see if anybody was inspired to push, ask a question, know more.
Thanks, Bill. Let's see if anybody has. You packed a lot into those 52 minutes.
Yeah, that's the danger, right? Because we're verbose at NIST. I use that word too often, but if we keep writing it and you just go to YouTube videos, are we supporting your needs?
Well, I would encourage members of the audience, if you have not read some of the NIST publications, the 800 series, for instance, to get some of those and look at them. They're exceedingly well done, very clearly laid out and kept up to date. There are a lot of them, however, so sometimes it's difficult to find exactly the ones you need. But they're easily found online, and they're really valuable resources.
I'm going to be dangerous, and I want to show you at least one of them, and a tactic that I want to offer. So I told you we did something in consumer data, so I'm going to click into that project. And securing property management systems, I didn't get to pick the design of the website, which is good because I would just want it to give me the answer that I'm looking for. But you can go to a complete guide online as an HTML document, as a PDF, or you can click individually in it. I'm going to pull up the complete guide just to have it on the screen. I get to put my name on the top. That's the cool part. There is a thing called a volume A. It is designed to describe the problem space what's the challenge, what's the solution, how do you, what's going to happen next if you keep reading, if we've convinced you, and then who we worked with. And intriguingly, the collaborators will be listed, and if it's, let me see, it didn't show up. They get their logo in a NIST pub, which is unique. Then I get to volume B, and let me pull that up. And I apologize, you're going to get a headache trying to keep track of me. We have a lot of boilerplate language, but you get to, I'm not going to like this one as well. Why isn't it showing me the table of contents the way I want to? Let me pull back. Again, I told you I shouldn't do live demos. So Spaff, you can stop me if you want, but there's a strength to looking at our table of contents in a document. Let me pull up a different version so I can get you a better table of contents. And why I say that is because I'm asking for your attention for any of these areas, and you need to make a quick decision. Do I have time to do this? And so if I go to the table of contents and I go, okay, what's going to happen in here? Well, I'm going to be pushed and pulled. I'm going to see that there's use cases and start to understand quickly, oh, why would I bother reading this? And then if the tables and pictures and the security characteristics, you start to get a language here that you might decide is worth the time. And I think it is, Spaff. I appreciate you noting that, 800 series are vital. They have a similar table of content structure that will give you the information. There's always an executive summary. You don't have to spend too much time, but you can spend a lot of time and learn a heck of a lot.
Definitely. NIST is a kind of a gem in the space and in government. It does a lot in the background, some of which Bill has touched on. And, we pay a lot of attention to DHS and the DOD, but NIST has a tremendous amount of expertise here. As he noted, they produce Nobel Prizes out of their labs. They produce standards that really power industry around the world. When we talk about things like standard cryptographic algorithms or the cybersecurity framework, that came out of NIST. And so it's one of those things that, unfortunately, when Congress needs something that they don't want to dump off to the Department of Defense, they give it to NIST, but they don't give NIST the money to do it. And NIST still finds a way to make it happen. The NCCOE is a tremendous addition to the things that can be done through NIST. And so hopefully you've gotten a sense of that from listening to this talk. If there aren't other questions, I think what we'll do, what just came up there?
Let me get back to the screen so I can see it. Where'd it go? Can you read it aloud? Because I'm not seeing that box anymore. Give me a second.
Do NIST cybersecurity guidelines have any issues with using open source tools or freeware?
We can use open source tools. We have to be. We do engage the lawyers a little bit to make sure, the true open sourceness of it, and then the question sort of also could be, hey, I told you we have people who care about software assurance. Are we following a best practice to note something about the quality of an open source environment? There have been funded efforts within government, and there is a lot of focus now on software supply chain that I think will take that open source question and give us a step-by-step checklist of things to do before you commit to its use in a government system. In our lab, we have a little more latitude, but we'd have to be, yes, we can build with open source. We need to be compelled that that's a good thing to do. And there are some open source things. Yeah, I'm going to talk around it in circles, but it is possible. Yes.
What role does NIST play in the development of CMMC?
So trickily, fancy word. My colleagues in our RMF Risk Management Framework office, Ron Ross, Vicky Piliteri, I mentioned their names. They put out documents like, controlled but unclassified information guidance. And so if I'm on the publications page, and if I typed in CUI, I think it'll come up. Let's double check. Here are papers that are in that space. We have a 172 assessing enhanced security. We have a 171 that was protecting controlled unclassified. These documents are the basis of much of the CMMC guidance. CMMC is cybersecurity maturity capability, cybersecurity maturity. I'm going to mess it up. it's the DoD. We're going to push on contractors to show us that they're doing more cybersecurity, that they're not adding risk to our supply chains because they're working with us. And these documents that have been published by NIST as non-regulatory are being made regulatory by the Department of Defense. So it's a bit of a 1 degree of separation model. We carefully write the standards, we get people to agree that they're rational, make sense, and then the DoD gets to do whatever it takes for them to make it a compliance process, which can be painful and make people cranky. Did I say that out loud on a recording? I think I did. Yep.
There you go. But thank you, Bill. And for the members of the audience, next week is the 24th CERIAS Symposium. And we have a number of speakers that are lined up. They're not going to be live. The Wednesday seminar speaker will be Richard Clark, and that will be webcast, but he's also going to be speaking live. Registration for anybody affiliated with an educational institution is free, but you do have to register to be able to attend. We would love to see people show up. There are going to be a lot of great talks, demonstrations, panels, and other material. So we'll either see you at the symposium or we'll see you here at the seminar next week. And once again, thank you so much, Bill, and I look forward to seeing you in person at some point.
Indeed, that'll be fun.
All right.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Bye, everyone.